Hi, I'm Jason Jolson with You Learn Online, and this is Jim Avery, who is also with You Learn Online. And this is going to be our EMS talking points on staging. So one of the things we did is we were looking up some information on staging and where to stage for different situations, for basically dangerous situations. And we're having a heck of a time finding anything that's come up other than the main policy we found was just be safe. So a couple things we want to go through is what is a dangerous situation that we're talking about and what we're going to stage for. So basically what we're looking at is potentially violent scenes. So whether dispatch just tells you to stage because of the information they got, or they've given you information and just by chance you happen to show up on scene and they just chuck somebody out the door and there's a big fight, you need to move away and they request police presence to secure the scene. So you need a place to stage. And it's a lot different than staging like for an MCI. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, MCIs are usually very defined. They have a staging area that's already set up when you're on your way in, or if you're one of the first units and you end up setting up the staging area. But where you're dealing with violent scenes and stuff like that, it's much more on the fly, and you can find yourself in the mix before you realize where you're at.
So just a couple of point things, stuff like if you're working any place that has a bar, they end up with a bar fight. That's a violent scene that you really want police to secure before you go. There's been a shooting, stabbing, and one of the big ones is domestics. Sometimes you end up in those ones and you don't even know it's actually a violent scene until you're already in there. So our biggest thing is where we're going to park this truck. So what I'm going to do is share the screen here. I got a map, and we'll just talk about different things on staging. All right, so we got this map. This actually basically came from Edmonton. I've got our ambulances here and some people. So one of the things I'm going to point out is, let's say this house here is our dangerous area. We're going to put it up in this area on this wonderful street here, 107. The trick is where do we want to stage our ambulance? Like where do we want to park? So one of the things that we've been talking about is that we definitely want to be at least 3 to 5 blocks away. Farther the way you are, the better off you are, and you don't want to be in the line of sight.
Yeah,
You
and
don't, yeah.
that is really the big part here is line of sight.
Yeah.
Cities are nice hiding places for all kinds of stuff. I mean, when we drive up in an ambulance, if we're a couple of blocks back and over, then we really are hidden. But it also is a good place to hide people that may be after you. So
Yeah.
sometimes you really gotta know your area.
So again, like we said, if our dangerous area is over here, where would we want to park our ambulance? So one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to park our ambulance, like you said, like that's a line of sight, so you can see straight down. And what this will do is if somebody actually runs out of the house that needs help, or even it's the guy that's trying to get away, they're going to head straight to you, right? You'll be like a magnet. We talk about being out of the line of sight. So if I park my ambulance over here, if they are trying to escape or run away, then all of a sudden they come around the corner and we're sitting there. So the ideal thing is they want, from what I've been reading, the people that, when I worked in Edmonton, we usually were 3 to 5 blocks away out of line of sight. So that would put us in this area, kind of more like in this area over here. So we're 3 blocks and we're over not in the line of sight. So the other thing we could be doing is we could be a little farther over here. We have a major intersection. Again, we have our exit, right? We can go up that way and we can go down that way as well to get out. So if we park our ambulance right here.
And that was a good point you made a few minutes ago is about being a magnet. Once people see you in an emergent situation, especially if there's violence involved, is as a big billboard, you do become a magnet. And as soon as people see you, they will gravitate towards you. And as you mentioned too, it could be the victim, it could be the perpetrator. And either way, we want to avoid both until we know the scene is truly safe.
And we don't know who's who really in this situation, right? And then the other thing we got to remember too is if we get civil unrest, like if we got a bunch of people sitting up here, this crowd right here can move really quickly through blocks. And you're parked right here, all of a sudden they're on top of you and there's a large crowd of people. So
And all they recognize too, a lot of times in these violent situations, as people are reverting to more base thinking, is they see a uniform and in that situation, a lot of times they equate it as police officer, and even though you may be identifying yourself as a paramedic, they will still look at you as a person of authority, and if they're kind of riled up, then it could really become violent for you.
Yep, exactly. And again, the biggest thing is I think is when you park your vehicle, make sure you have a way out, right? And more than one way out. So like I said here, like I said, you got your big old ambulance parked here. You can either go this way. You can even back up and go right, turn around so you can get out to a major intersection. And again, I just want to point out here, you got to watch out for these kind of things. Is that you don't want that dead end, right? Here, it's going to get you out the major street and go away because it's up in this area. But we got to make sure we don't back ourselves into a dead end street somewhere. And a lot of times too, where you're driving in, you end up having to go by the scene by mistake, and you see a police car on scene does not mean it's secure, right? Until you've been notified through dispatch that the police have told them that the scene is secure, that's when it's safe to go in. So, Jim, I think the biggest things we just got to remember is that we want to be 3 to 5 blocks away. We want to be out of the line of sight, and we really need to have an exit plan in case
Yes.
things start to go bad.
Yeah, 3 to 5 blocks away, and not in a straight line, like you've pointed out
Yeah.
there. 3 or 4 blocks down and 2 or 3 blocks over, and then as people flood through the system, especially in a civil unrest situation, hopefully you have enough radio communication that you can hear they're coming your way, and it's a good idea to get out of there then. High index of suspicion for anything volatile, and sometimes, and especially for medical situations, it's better for us to save us in our equipment in our unit by making a tactical retreat so that we can get in there and do some good after. If you're enveloped by a group and they get violent or destructive, then you're essentially out of action and you're actually now a victim. And we need to dedicate resources to our crews, which is, puts the emotions at even a higher spike. So if we pay attention to what's going on around us and make sure that we're listening, if we need to get out of there early, get out of there early, move another 5 to 10 blocks away, because we can always get back in there. But we can't, when we're in the middle of it and our unit's destroyed, we can't, we're out of action then.
And then one more thing too is usually your dispatch will let the other units in the city or the area know where the violent scene is, right? So they're not driving through by mistake, even though you're staged, they may not even know what's happening. And if you do have another truck come to back up, because there might be multiple patients on scene, like you said, if it's a bar fight, you might have a couple people. You got to let them know where you're staged, and and if you've moved because it's gotten too dangerous, and you have another truck coming in to help you to back you up, you need to make sure they know that you're moving out of the area because it's unsafe.
Yeah, and let them know where you're going so that you can stage kind of together and out of the way, or stage on different ends of the situation so that you can come in from two different ways if need to.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing. I think one of the things we should talk about though is the um, we're talking about the city for most of it, but if you're working rural, right, like out in the country, and I've done that too, and you have too, that
Yep.
sometimes the line of sight is pretty big.
Yeah. If you
Like,
get a fairly flat grain field and it's not a lot of hills in some areas, your line of sight could almost be a kilometer without breaking a sweat. And being in an ambulance, I mean, it is a pretty big vehicle. People are going to see it. So staging in the rural area, once again, you need to understand your area and where you're responding to, and where you need to be. Now, thankfully, most fields, by the time somebody sees you and trucks across the field, they're usually in a world of hurt and quagmire because of the muck and the dirt. But it still doesn't necessarily keep you out of harm's way if they see you.
yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Like, there's also trees. Sometimes you can hide behind a bush, your truck, if it looks like you're going to be far away. And again, this has to be our big disclaimer that this is just information only. You have to follow the policy procedures of your service and what you do locally. But like, you can even shut the lights off before you get too close, and shut the siren off if you know it's a violent situation until you're cleared to go in.
Mhm.
And that's the biggest thing, that you have to wait for the police, especially if you show up early and you got one RCMP sometimes working by themselves, and that's all you see doesn't mean the scene's still safe to go into.
Yeah, and a lot of times in the rural situation, you do only have one police officer initially, and it takes quite a while, even up to an hour in some situations, in order to get more help. So high index of suspicion, keep yourself safe and actionable, and so that if something does come your way, even though you're out of the mix for now, you can get back into it as opposed to um, getting harmed beforehand. And keep in mind, especially in the rural environment, because of the line of sight issues and stuff, a lot of people have hunting rifles, and those are considered high energy, high power weapons.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's about all we have to say about staging because we could beat this to death. But just the biggest thing is, right, watch for line of sight, make sure you're far enough away, and don't be entering the scene unless you know it's actually safe from the police, the RCMP, or whatever service you're working with. And I'm Jason,
I'm Jim.
and this is You Learn Online, and we'll have some more of these talking points along the way. Thanks.
Bye bye.